आज हम लोग करने वाले हैं लोकोमोशन एंड मूवमेंट की एनसीईआरटी रीडिंग. सो लेट्स स्टार्ट. Movement is one of the significant features of living being. Animal and plants exhibit a wide range of movements. Streaming of protoplasm in the unicellular organisms like amoeba is a simple form of movement. Movement of cilia, flagella, tentacles are shown by many organisms. Human beings can move limbs, jaws, eyelids, tongue, etc. Some of the movements result in the change of place or location. Such voluntary movements are called as locomotion. Walking, running, climbing, flying, swimming are all some forms of locomotory movements. Locomotory structures need not to be differentiated from those affecting other types of movement. For example, paramecium cilia helps in the movement of food through cytopharynx and in locomotion as well. Hydra can use its tentacles to capturing its prey and also use them for locomotion. We use limbs for change in body posture and locomotion as well. The above observation suggests that the movement and locomotion cannot be studied separately. The two may be linked by stating that all locomotions are movements, but all movements are not locomotion. This is important. All locomotions are movement, but all movements are not locomotions. Method of locomotion performed by animals vary with their habitat and their demand of situation. However, locomotion is generally in the search of food, shelter, mate, suitable breeding grounds, favorable climate conditions, or to escape from the enemies or predators. Types of movement. Cell of the human body exhibits three main types of movements, namely amoeboid, ciliary, and muscular. Some specialized cells in our body like macrophages, leukocytes in the blood exhibits amoeboid movement. It is affected by pseudopodia forming by the streaming of the protoplasm in amoeba. Cytoskeletal elements like microfilaments are also involved in the amoeboid movement. Ciliary movement occurs in most of our internal tubular organs, which are lined by ciliated epithelium. The coordinated movements of cilia and trachea helps us in removing dust particles and some of the other foreign substances inhaled along with the atmospheric air. Passage of ova through the female reproductive tract is also facilitated by ciliary muscles. Movement of our limbs, jaws, tongue, etc. require muscle movement. The contractile property of muscles are effectively used for the locomotion and other movements by human beings and majority of the multicellular organisms. Locomotion requires a perfect coordinated activity, muscular, skeletal, and neural system. In this chapter, we learn about the types of muscles, their structures, mechanism, and their contraction, and the important aspects of skeletal system. Now we are going to study about the muscles. We have studied in chapter 8 that the cilia and flagella are the outgrowth of the cell membrane. Flagellary movements helps in swimming of spermatozoa, maintenance of water current in the canal system of sponges, and locomotion of protozoans like euglena. Muscle is a specialized tissue of mesodermal origin. About 40 to 50% of the body weight of the human adult is contributed by muscle. They have special properties like excitability, contractibility, and extensibility, and elasticity. Muscles have been classified using different criteria, namely location, appearance, and nature of regulation of their activities. Based on their location, three types of muscles are identified: skeletal, visceral, and cardiac. Now, skeletal muscle. Skeletal muscles are closely associated with the skeletal components of the body. They have a striped appearance under the microscope and hence called as the striated muscles. As their activities are under the voluntary control of the nerve system, They are also known as the voluntary muscles too. They are primarily involved in locomotory actions and changes in the body posture. Now, visceral muscle. Visceral muscles are located in the inner wall of hollow visceral organs of the body, like the alimentary canal, reproductive tract, etc. They do not exhibit any striations and are smooth in appearance. Hence, they are called as smooth muscles, non-striated muscles. Their activity are not under the voluntary control of the nerve system and are therefore known as the involuntary muscles. They assist, for example, the transportation of food through the digestive tract and the gamete through the genital tract. As the name suggested, cardiac muscles are the muscles of the heart. Many cardiac cells assemble their branching pattern to form cardiac muscle. Based on their appearance, cardiac muscles are striated. They are involuntary in nature, as the nervous system does not control the activity directly. Let us examine the skeletal muscle in details to understand the structure and mechanism of contraction. Each organized skeletal muscle in our body is made up of a number of muscle bundles or fascicles held together by common collagenous connective tissue layer called as fascia. Each muscle bundle contains number of muscle fibers. Each muscle fibers are lined by plasma membrane called as sarcolemma, enclosing the sarcoplasm. Muscle fibers is a syncytium as the sarcoplasm contains many nuclei. The endoplasmic reticulum, that is sarcoplasmic reticulum of the muscle fiber, is storehouse of calcium ions. This is important. It is storehouse of calcium ions. A characteristic feature of muscle fiber is presence of large number of parallelly arranged filaments in the sarcoplasm called as the microfilament or myofibrils. Each myofibril has alternate dark and light bands on it. A detailed study of myofibrils has established that the striated appearance is due to the distribution pattern of two important proteins, that is actin and myosin. The light bands contain actin and is called I band or isotropic band, whereas the dark band called A, anisotropic band, contains myosin. Both the proteins are arranged as rod-like structures parallel to each other and also to the longitudinal axis of the myofibril. Actin filaments are thinner as compared to the myosin filaments, hence are commonly called as thin, thick filaments respectively. In the center of each I band is an elastic fiber called a Z-line, which bisects it. The thin filament are firmly attached to the Z-line. The thick filament in A band are also held together in the middle of the band by the thin fibrous membrane called as M-line. The A and I band are arranged alternately throughout the length of the myofibril. The portion of the myofibril between two successive Z-lines is considered as the functional unit of the contraction and it's called the sarcomere. In a resting state, the edges of the thin filament on either side of the thick filament partially overlaps the free end of the thick filament, leaving the central part of the thick filament. This central part of the thick filament not overlapped by the thin filament called as the edge zone. Let me explain you the whole paragraph. Okay. This is actin. This is S line. This is A line. This is H line. This is A line from here to here. It is A line. A line. Similarly, we have to draw the same pattern here also. Here also there will be a line, and between two A lines there is an I line. Okay. and if we do the center partition, then we got a M. Then see, there are two Z lines. Between them there is a S line, which is mentioned in the text, and this particular part is A line and this particular part is H line. Okay, and between these two A lines there would be some A line here also. Between these two A lines there is a I band. Got it? Now, structure of contractile proteins. Each actin thin filament is made up of two F filamentous actins helically bound to each other. Each F actin is a polymer of monomeric G globular actin. Two filaments of another protein, tropomyosin, also run close to the F actin throughout its length. A complex protein, troponin, is distributed at regular interval of the tropomyosin. In the resting state, a subunit of tropo then masks the active binding site of myosin of an actin filament. Each myosin that is thick filament is also a polymerized protein. Many monomeric proteins called as the meromyosin constitute one thick filament. Each meromycin has two important parts, a globular head with a short arm and a tail. The former being called as the heavy meromycin HMM and the later the light meromycin is LMM. The HMM components, that is the head and short arms, project outwards at regular distance and angle from each other, forms a surface of a polymerized myosin filament and is known as cross-arm. The globular head is an activity ATPase enzyme and has binding sites for ATP and active sites for actin. Mechanism of muscle contraction. Mechanism of muscle contraction is best explained by the sliding filament theory, which states that the contraction of a muscle fiber takes place by a sliding of the thin filaments over the thick filament. Muscle contraction is initiated by a single cent of central nervous system, that is CNS, by motor neurons. A motor neuron along with the muscle fiber connect to its constituent motor units. The junction between a motor neuron and a sarcolemma of a muscle fiber is called as the neuromuscular junction or motor end plate. A neural signal reaching this junction releases a neurotransmitter, that is acetylcholine ACH, which generates an action potential in the sarcolemma. This spreads through the muscle fibers and cause the release of calcium ion into the sarcoplasm. Increasing calcium ion level leads to the binding of calcium with subunits of troponin on actin filament and thereby removes the masking of the active site of myosin. Utilizing the energy of ATP hydrolysis, the myosin head now binds to the exposed active site and acting to form a cross bridge. This pulls the attached actin filament towards the center of A band. The Z line attached to this actin and also pulled inwards, thereby causing a shortening in the sarcomere, that is contraction. It is clear from the above step that during shortening of the muscle, that is contraction, the I band gets reduced whereas the A band retains to length. The myosin releasing the ADP and P1 goes back to its relaxed state. A new ATP bind and the cross bridge is broken. The ATP is again hydrolyzed by a myosin head. The cycle of the cross bridge formation and the breakage is replaced, causing the further sliding. The process continues till calcium plus ions are pumped back to the sarcoplasmic cisternae, resulting in the masking of actin filament. This causes the return to Z-line back to their original position, that is relaxation. The reaction time of the fibers can vary in different muscles. Repeated activation of the muscle can lead to the accumulation of lactic acid due to anaerobic breakdown of glycogen in them, causing fatigue. Muscle contains a red-colored oxygen-storing pigment called as myoglobin. Myoglobin contains a high in some of the muscles which give it reddish appearance. Such muscles are called as red fibers. These muscles contains plenty of mitochondria which can utilize the large amount of oxygen stored in them for ATP production. These muscles therefore can also be called as aerobic muscles. On the other hand, some of the muscle possess very less quantity of myoglobin and therefore appears pale and whitish. These are white fibers. Number of mitochondria are also few in them, but the amount of sarcoplasmic reticulum is high, depend on the anaerobic process for energy. Now skeletal system. Skeletal system consists of a framework of bone and few cartilage. This system has a significant role in the movement shown by the body. Imagine chewing food without jaws, jaw bones, and walking around without the limb bones. Bone and cartilage are specialized connective tissue. The former has a very hard matrix due to calcium salt and in calcium salt in it, and the latter has slightly pliable matrix due to chondroitin salts. In human beings, this system is made up of 206 bones and a few cartilages. It is grouped into two principal divisions, the axial and the appendicular skeleton. The axial skeleton comprises of 80 bones distributed along the main axis of the body. The skull, the vertebral column, the sternum, and the ribs constitute axial skeleton. The skull is composed of two sets of bones, cranial and facial. That total is 22 bones. Cranial bones are 8 in number. They form the hard protective outer covering cranium for the brain. The facial region is made up of 14 skeletal elements which form the frontal part of the skull. A single U-shaped bone called as the hyoid is present at the base of the buccal cavity, and it is also included in the skull. Each middle ear contains 3 tiny bones, malleus, incus, or stapes, collectively called as the ear ossicles. The skull region articulates with the superior region of the vertebral column with the help of two occipital condyles, that is dicondylic skull. Our vertebral column is formed by 26 serially arranged units called as the vertebrae and is dorsally placed. It extends from the base of the skull and constitutes the main framework of the trunk. Each vertebra has a central hollow portion, neural canal, through which the spinal cord passes. First vertebra is the atlas and it articulates with the occipital condyles. The vertebral column is differentiated into cervicals, thoracic, lumbar, cervicals, one fused, and coccygeal, one fused regions starting from the skull. The number of cervical vertebrae are 7 in almost all mammals, including human beings. The vertebral columns protect the spinal cord, supporting the head, and serve as point of attachment for the ribs and musculature of the back. Sternum is a flat bone on a ventral midline of thorax. There are 2 pairs of ribs, 12 pair of ribs. Each rib is thin, flat bone connected dorsally to the vertebral column of the ventral and ventrally to the sternum. It has two articulation surface and dorsal its dorsal end and is hence called as bicephalic. First seven pairs of the rib are called as true ribs dorsally. They are attached to the thoracic vertebrae and ventrally connected to the sternum with the help of hyaline cartilage. 8th, 9th, and 10th pair of the ribs do not articulate directly with the sternum but joins the 7th rib with the help of a hyaline cartilage. These are called as the vertebrocondyle, that is false ribs. Last two pairs, 11th and 12th ribs, are not connected ventrally and are therefore called as the floating ribs. Thoracic vertebrae, ribs, and sternum together forms the rib cage. With the diagram, you can understand that from 1 to 7 that these are true ribs, from 8, 9, and 10th as false rib, and 11, 12, 12 as floating ribs, which are directly connected to the vertebral column and not connected to any of the ribs. So, next point, the bone of the limb along with their girdles constitute the appendicular skeleton. Each limb is made up of 30 bones. The bones of the hand, forelimb, and humerus radius and carpal wrist bones, 8 in number, metacarpals, palm bones, 5 in numbers, and phalanges, digits, 14 in numbers. Femur, thigh bone, the longest bone, tibia, fibula, tarsals, ankle bone, 7 in number, metatarsals, 5 in number, and phalanges, digits, that is 14 in number, are the bones of the leg, hind limb. A cup-shaped bone called as the patella covered the knee ventrally. Pectoral and pelvic girdle bones helps in the articulation of the upper and the lower limbs respectively with the axial skeleton. Each girdle is formed of two halves. Each half of the pectoral girdle consists of clavicle and scapula. Scapula is the largest triangular flat bone situated in the dorsal part of the thorax between the 2nd and the 7th rib. The dorsal flat triangular body of scapula has a slightly elevated ridge called as the spine, which projects as a flat expanded process called as the acromion. The clavicle articulates with this. Below the acromion is a depression called as the glenoid cavity, which articulates with the head and the humor to form the shoulder joint. Each clavicle is long cylinder bone with two curvature. These bone is commonly called as the collar bones. Pelvic girdle consists of two coxal bones. Each coxal bone is formed by a fusion of three bones, that is ilium, ischium, and pubis. At the point of fusion, the above bone is a cavity called as the acetabulum, which is thigh bone articulates. The two halves of the pelvic girdle meets ventrally to form a pubic symphysis containing fibrous cartilage. Joints are essential for all types of movement involving the bone part of the body. Locomotory are no exceptions to this. Joints are points to contact between bones or between the bones and cartilage. Force generated by the muscle is used to carry the movement through joints, where the joints act as the fulcrum. The movability at these joints vary depending on the different factors. Joints have been classified into three major structural forms, namely fibrous, cartilaginous, and synovial. Thigh press joints do not allow any movement. This type of joint is shown in the flat skull bones, which fuse end to end with the help of dense fibrous connective tissues in the form of strutures to form cranium. The cartilaginous joint. Bones involved are joined together with the help of cartilage. The joint between the adjacent vertebrae is in the vertebral column of the pattern and it permits limited movement. Synovial joint are characterized by the presence of the fluid-filled synovial cavity between the articulating surface of two bones. Such an arrangement allows considerable movement. These joints help in the locomotion and many other movements. Ball and socket joints between the humerus and pectoral girdle. Hinge joint, that is knee joint. Pivot joint, that is between the atlas and the axis. Gliding joint between the carpals. The slidal joint between the carpals and the metacarpals of the thumb are some of examples. Disorders of muscular and skeletal system, that is myasthenia gravis. Autoimmune disorder है affecting the neuromuscular junction leading to the fatigue, weakness, paralysis, skeletal muscles. Muscular dystrophy, progressive degeneration of the skeletal muscle mostly due to genetic disorder है. Okay, मेन चीज आपको याद कर रखनी है. Myasthenia gravis is an autoimmune disorder and muscular dystrophy is a genetic disorder. Now tetani, rapid spasm, सी वर्ड याद रखना है. rapid spasm, that is wild contraction, and calcium, low calcium level याद रखना है. ठीक है. Tetani, rapid spasms, wild contraction in muscle due to low calcium in body fluid. Arthritis, inflammation of joints. Osteoporosis, age-related disorder characterized by decreased bone mass and increased chance of fracture. Decreased level of erosion is common cause. Gout, inflammation of joint duct, accumulation of uric acid and crystals. So chapter is over. Thank you for watching.